The sky hasn't been blue since the third collapse. What stretches above us now is a kind of trembling gray, bruised, flickering vault smeared with soot and static. Sometimes it pulses like it's breathing. Other times it just hangs there, heavy and lifeless, as though the heavens themselves gave up trying to watch over this place. There used to be seasons, summer, winter, the gentle smell of leaves in the fall. Now we get two kinds of weather, blistering heat that peels the skin off your back, or cold so sharp it cracks the bones of abandoned buildings. The air smells of ozone and smoke, sometimes wet copper when it rains, if you can call it rain. It's more like acid mist, leaving pockmarks in old steel and searing holes in unprotected skin. Umbrellas are relics now, no better than paper shields. In a burning house, cities have collapsed into carcasses. I passed through Chicago last spring, what's left of it, anyway. Navy Pier is just a twisted, rusted scaffold slumped into the toxic waters of Lake Michigan, which glows faintly green at night, thick with algae and dead memories. The skyscrapers are half submerged in sand, blown in from the cracked plains. It's not water anymore that buries the cities. It's the dust. It's the wind. The earth itself is reclaiming everything it once allowed us to borrow. And yet, it's not just climate anymore. That was only the beginning. When the earth buckled and the weather turned against us, people prayed for salvation. But what came? Instead were the giants, towering silhouettes moving behind curtains of storm clouds, shadows that shouldn't exist in a rational world, shapes so massive they make the sky look small. Some say they were always here beneath mountains or frozen in ice until the world grew hot enough to wake them. Others say we summoned them. Maybe the planet, tired of us, called its ancient guardians back. Their footprints turned valleys into canyons. Their voices, or whatever sound they make, shake the airwaves like thunder trapped inside a radio. Most don't even get a clear look at them before they vanish again into fog or smoke or the black horizon. But the damage remains. Craters where towns used to be. Hills that move when you're not looking. Some of us still remember the world as it was. Others were born into this madness, thinking shattered streets and melting skies are normal. There are no governments left. Not really. The last UN transmission was over 5 years ago, just a string of coordinates and a single word, evacuate. But to where? There's no safe place left, just fewer monsters in some places than others. Now, you've got factions people, clinging to whatever identity they can to survive. Some worship the giants like gods. They wear robes stitched from solar blankets and paint themselves with ash. They call themselves the Reclaimers. They believe the giants are here to purify the world of humanity's sin. They don't kill indiscriminately, but they will if they think you stand in the way of what they call the cleansing. Then there are the scavenger guilds, organized raiders, really operating out of old bunkers, subway stations, and crumbling malls. Their currency isn't gold or dollars, it's batteries, clean water, solar glass, information. And they guard their caches with more ferocity than any government ever did a border. You might stumble on a commune here and there, a few dozen people running a water still, bartering canned goods, broadcasting weather, updates to no one in particular. You'll hear them sometimes on the dial if you've got a working radio. And if the signal isn't scrambled by static or giant song, they're the ones I try to reach. The ones who still believe in voices. I broadcast from what used to be a regional emergency alert tower middle of nowhere, buried beneath 20 feet of rock and reinforced concrete. I scavenge old solar panels, reroute power through the backup battery banks, and pedal when the clouds won't break. It's not much, but it works, most days, and I keep speaking. I speak because someone has to. Even if it's just to record our slow collapse, even if I'm the last voice echoing through a dead world, because the giants haven't gone. They walk. I've seen them, felt the tremors when they move. And the worst part, they're not hunting us, not deliberately. We're just ants beneath their feet. Collateral in some ancient war we never understood. Maybe they'll return to wherever they came from. Maybe not. Until then, the world's turned feral. The land is broken. The sky is torn. And hope, well, hopes become a kind of currency, too. You don't spend it unless you know you'll get something back. But I keep a little stored away, in case someone's still listening. In case this voice finds its way past the static. You are listening to the radio. During the return of the giants, asterisk, I pedal once, twice, and the generator hums to life. The weak sputter of electricity crackles across the airwaves, and I know I'm on. They'll hear me soon, wherever they are. Somewhere, another soul might be tuning the dial, hoping for any sign of life beyond the dust. My name is Mara Vasquez. I wasn't always the voice in the static. Once, I was an environmental researcher poring over melting ice data, charting storm patterns, warning anyone who'd listen that the planet was fracturing. I believed in data, in white lab coats, in the power of information to save people. Then the rains turned to acid, the forests ignited. The seas boiled. The governments collapsed. Science became a survival tactic instead of a calling, and I became the last transmitter in a broken network. Asterisk, I remember the smell of fresh printed reports in a climate lab overlooking the Olympic Mountains. My hands shook when I held those documents, knowing they contained truths no one wanted to face. I had colleagues, bright PhD candidates, who dreamed of reversing course, of healing the world. We believed in treaties and policies and public will. I had friends, a home heated by clean biogas, weekends hiking in snow that never melted. There were birthdays, cups of coffee steaming between my gloves, the laughter of people who'd never seen a sky more than 20 miles wide. All of that is gone. When the first giant rose from the fractured glacier, I watched it on a shaky phone video, thought it a hallucination until I felt its tremor shake my building. By then, the headlines spoke of anomalies, slow-moving storms that devoured acres of forest, freak quakes in formerly stable zones. I packed a rucksack with water filters, freeze-dried rations, a battered laptop, and my last voice recorder. I left my apartment with one eye on the ground, feeling every step like a countdown asterisk. Now my routine is ritual. Before dawn, I pedal to charge the battery banks salvaged from the old emergency tower. After daybreak, I check the horizon-red haze as far as the eye can see. I scour the remains of ghost towns for solar glass, copper wiring, any scrap of technology I can repurpose. Every screw, every diode, every drop of distilled water is treasure. I barter with scavengers for medical tinctures, morphine vials, and antiseptic that are worth their weight in gold. At night, I'm back inside the tower, speaking into a mic, stitching together weather reports, scavenging tips and my own voice, so that someone, somewhere, knows they're not alone. I sleep in shifts of 2 hours, wrapped in a thermal blanket designed for high-altitude expeditions. I dream of rain. Sometimes I wake convinced I hear droplets on the metal roof. It's always the wind, what drives me. At first, it was guilt. Guilt that I'd spent so long warning the world while the world simply burned. But guilt doesn't keep a mind alive when the giants stomp through mountain passes and entire towns disappear in their shadows. No, it's hope, a fierce, stubborn ember tucked under the ash. I've heard rumors of a community in the Rockies, high enough to escape the worst storms, who built a greenhouse powered by geothermal vents. Others speak of survivors on the eastern shore who harvest kelp and desalinate water with wind turbines revived from old schematics. I don't know if any of it's real, but I broadcast those stories anyway because hope, even false hope, is better than despair. I also broadcast because I've lost too much silence. In the world before, silence was peace. Now, silence is the sound of dying batteries and empty radios. I fill the void with words weather warnings, static-cleared melodies played on a solar violin, whatever I can salvage. If the giants crush the tower tomorrow, at least someone will remember my voice. I lost my sister Lila on the first night the storms turned apocalyptic. We'd barricaded ourselves in her downtown apartment, hoping the glass would hold against the wind. I heard her scream before the window sheathed itself in dust. When I broke in, hours later, all that remained was shattered glass and her scarf, caught on a bent street lamp. I carried that scarf with me for weeks until it disintegrated in acid rain. I bury the pain now under routine, gather broadcasts Cavendish survive. But at night, when the world is too quiet, I replay her laughter on the recorder. I talk to her sometimes over the mic, as though she might be listening on a distant dial. Beyond Lila, I've lost entire friendships to the factions. The Reclaimers believe the giants purify humanity. They raped the solar farms in Wyoming, my old research station, leaving nothing but ash. My closest friend Ravi joined them, convinced the earth spoke through those giants. He left me a final message. You can't stop the reckoning, Mara. Trust is currency, too precious to spend freely. I've approached scavenger bands with offers to trade location data for supplies. Sometimes it works. I hand over a map of my tower's backup generator in exchange for filter caps and fuel cells. Other times, they slip a blade across my throat and vanish into the dust. I learn quickly where to go and where never to go again. I've learned to read the wind for signs of giant movement. A stillness can be worse than tremors because it means they're walking away from you. If the ground rattles beneath your feet, you may yet have a chance to take cover. But if the air falls silent, there in the next valley, hidden by their own shadow, despite it all, I'm not broken. Each broadcast feels like a heartbeat proof that life persists. This morning, I shared a recipe for turning cactus spines into water-resistant thread. Yesterday, I described how to patch a punctured gas can with resin from pine trees still clinging to life at high elevations. Last night, I read a poem from an old anthology Wordsworth's. I wandered lonely as a cloud, because even amid giants and ruin, we need flowers in our minds. Sometimes I imagine listeners humming along. Maybe a father teaches his daughter how to splice wires using my instructions, or a small band of survivors radios back, "Thank you." Those words, 4 syllables, are all I need to keep spinning these wheels. Asterisk, I don't know where this ends. Maybe the giants will level the tower tomorrow. Maybe they'll retreat, and the storms will die, and the world will start to sew itself back together from the scars. Maybe we'll learn to coexist with these ancient titans sharing the planet, with creatures older than our civilization, or maybe we'll fade away, consumed by our own mistakes. But until that final broadcast, till the last bulb in this tower flickers out, Ty will keep speaking, because memory is resistance, and voice is defiance. If I fall silent, then the world truly has ended. So I pedal, I scavenge, I broadcast, and in the dark hush, after the signal dies, I believe that somewhere, someone is listening. I am Mara Vasquez. This is my confession, my beacon, my vow. And as long as breath fills my lungs, I will keep the signal alive. I switch off the microphone and listen for the wind. It's louder, today angry, laden with dust, so fine it slips through every filter. The anemometer I scavenged a month ago ticks in the corner, its hands swinging wildly past 40 miles per hour. That's gale force in a world that's already unraveling. Asterisk water hasn't fallen here in over 4 years. The last measurable rain registered an acidic pH that dissolved metal caps and burned unprotected skin. Since then, the sky has stayed too hot for clouds to form. Solar radiation chews through our makeshift shelters, and daytime temperatures reach well over 125 degrees Fahrenheit, 52 degrees Celsius. At night, it only cools to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius. This heat stress kills crops before they germinate and bakes the earth until it cracks like porcelain dot. According to pre-collapse data I downloaded once from an old NOAA archive, our region used to average 30 inches of rain annually. Now it's less than half an inch, and what little arrives is laced with pollutants from dying petrochemical refineries and coal ash pits, left to rust. Without consistent precipitation, groundwater tables have dropped more than 50 feet. Wells pump nothing but sand, and riverbeds are nothing but sun-cracked stone. When spring comes, if you can still call it, that the parched grasses ignite spontaneously. Global average temperatures have risen by 2.8 degrees Celsius since 2050. At this rate, we're in a perpetual fire season. Last month, I tracked a blaze that started 20 miles north of my tower. It grew into a wall of flame 100 miles wide within 72 hours, consuming everything in its path. Smoke turned the sky orange so dense I could barely see my own hand in front of my face. Respiratory masks help, but they filter only particulate. The toxic gases still seep through. Asterisk, yet the world hasn't turned into an open furnace everywhere. Climate chaos has fractured weather patterns. To the west, jet streams linger, tearing moisture off the Pacific into atmospheric rivers that unleash a month's worth of rain in a single day. Floodwaters gouge out towns, wash away roads, and bury entire communities under mud and wreckage. I remember scrolling through a survivor's recording where they described floating amidst lamps, cradling a child as their town drifted by like a broken ark. Here, though, it's drought and dust. But even drought ends with monsoons that arrive all at once, if they arrive at all. When they do, it's hellfire turning to flash flood in the blink of an eye. Soil that's baked solid won't drink the water. It sheds every drop over fields and towns, carving new canyons of destruction. Asterisk. And then there are the giants. Their presence amplifies every crisis. Each step they take cracks the lithosphere, triggers seismic events, and dislodges ancient aquifers. But those two burst, releasing brine or toxic sludge pockets. One such event sent a geyser of radioactive sludge across a 10-mile radius, poisoning what little remained of a subsurface aquifer. So even if you dig deep, the water might kill you faster than thirst. Asterisk. I left the tower 3 days ago on a supply run toward an abandoned solar farm south of here. I crested a dune at dawn and saw 4 figures outlined against a crimson horizon. They carried long rifles and red banners painted with the giants' WW3 vertical lines beneath a crescent. The reclaimers, I thought, until one raised a hand in greeting. Their leader wore a gas mask fitted with a voice modulator that made her voice tremble like static. We know your broadcasts. You call this hope. I offered them water 2 liters, rationed. They traded information, a cache of lithium cells 20 miles east, unguarded, in an old data center. They asked for nothing in return but a promise. Tell the world that giants are cleansing us. I refused. They left me to pedal away alone, clutching my 2 empty canteens. Their smiles under the mask straps were merciless. On another run, I met a small caravan of Scavenger 6 adults, 2 children hoisting jerrycans of diesel. They taught me how to rig a gravity-fed charcoal filter for water, using sand and crushed coal from a collapsed mine. In exchange, I helped repair their radio. They wanted to broadcast their location so other survivors could join them. I warned them it was a suicide beacon. Radio waves travel far, and so do raiders. They chose to broadcast anyway. 2 nights. Later, I heard gunfire on the open channel, and then silence. Asterisk. Day by day, resources dwindle. Solar panels degrade under relentless UV. Batteries lose capacity after hundreds of cycles. Filters clog. They can't be washed or backflushed without clean water. Crop yield diminishes as seed banks degrade in heat. Nomadic groups march on ground once deemed too barren, stripping every edible route and chewing on cactus pulp until stomachs ulcerate. Each crisis spawns new crises. A wildfire strips topsoil, turning it hydrophobic. Rain then runs off catastrophically, washing away what little fertile ground remained. Drought weakens trees. The next storm snaps them like matchsticks, felling power lines and crushing shelters. Each storm deposits salt crusts that poison the soil for years. Asterisk water. I carry 3 liters in a backpack bladder. I ration it 150 milliliters per waking hour. Beyond that, dehydration sets in, dizzy spells, hallucinations, kidney failure. Food rations consist of freeze-dried beans, insect protein bars, and dried seaweed. Calories run thin, 1,200 kcal per day, when my body needs at least 2,000. I pedal slower each month. Fuel, diesel, is nearly extinct. I've converted an old motorcycle engine to run on bio-oil distilled from plant waste. Every drop costs me 8 hours of still watch, distilling, skimming off toxins, and testing pH. One mistake burns the engine. Medicine. Morphine is an austerity item. Antibiotics are an even rarer treasure looted from field hospitals. A cut can become fatal if infection takes hold. Players barter pills like gold. Asterisk, I speak plainly on the air. If you're facing dehydration, remember that cactus sap is not safe to drink unfiltered. Boil it. First, sediment and alkaloids settle out. Then pass it through activated charcoal made from charred wood. When treating a lightning storm casualty, suspect electric arc injuries, even without visible burns. Internal organ damage can occur. Immobilize the spine and keep them warm. Infection is a greater risk than the initial shock. During acid rain, shelter in concrete structures. Steel rebar will shield you. Wear goggles and eat antacids to neutralize ingested acid. I cite dry fax pH curves, bacterial kill rates at various temperatures, desiccation thresholds for seed viability. I do it because when the next storm or giant stomp comes, you need knowledge more than hope. Asterisk, last night, I monitored seismic sensors embedded in the tower's footing. A series of low-frequency quakes rolled through every 10 minutes. So I broadcast this. If you hear these tremors, seek low ground valleys can echo the giant's steps, but hills can trap you in their wake. Stay near rock overhangs, and don't set up camp near dead trees. They collapse in wind gusts. Charge your devices when the quakes pause. If the tower falls, look for markers I carved at the base. Follow the stones to the east. Asterisk, survival here isn't just endurance. It's a choice every morning to face an indifferent planet and creatures beyond comprehension. It's weighing the value of every breath, every mouthful of water, every second of wireless airtime. It's choosing to broadcast instructions that may save hundreds, knowing the signal might also guide their killers. But this is the only war one can fight, armed with data, armed with shared knowledge, against storms, against drought, against the forgotten titans that trample the world. The dial clicks, the hum of the generator rises. I tighten my gloves, lean into the cycle pedals, and prepare to speak. The tremors intensify. The giants are coming. Asterisk, I keep my eyes on the horizon, but it's all the same. Rolling dunes of ash-gray dust under a leaden sky. Each breath tastes like metal and despair. The generator's hum has become my heartbeat, its sputtering interruption. The only warning of encroaching silence. Asterisk, every day, the margins of my supplies shrink. Water, my cash wants, 20 liters, has dwindled to 6. That's barely enough for 3 days on foot if I ration properly. 500 milliliters each morning, 250 at midday, 250 at dusk. By midnight, my mouth is so parched I taste blood. Food to insect protein bars, a handful of freeze-dried beans, and 1 packet of algae flakes remain. Yesterday, I boiled those algae into a thin soup, swallowing it while visions danced behind my eyelids. Fuel, the bio-oil still pours, but the distillation yield is falling. The pine needles are gone, and the portable stills resin trap is clogged beyond backflushing without risking contamination. 1 wrong drop and the motor seizes. I've scavenged every abandoned settlement within a 50-mile radius. Each had already been picked clean by caravans of scavengers or raiders. The water stills were gone, solar panels shattered, batteries looted. I found only a single cache of half-rotted canned Peaches 3 cans to gas, laden to open dot. The harsh math settles over me. I cannot stay much longer. The giant's tremors grow stronger by the day. I try to record every quiver, hoping someone, reading these logs later, can map their roots. But logging each tremor feels like marking the seconds until my own end. Asterisk on my third morning of this supply run. The dust lay thick as soup, and I nearly stumbled over fresh footprints, boot treads from a standard assault rifle. I flattened myself against a broken concrete barricade, listening. A wind gust masked distant voices. When the wind died, the voices came closer, deep, gruff tones, and the rasp of gas masks. I slipped off my pack and readied the microprojector. For a distraction, makeshift flare of phosphorus ignited with a 9-volt battery. As they passed, I triggered the flare. It hissed and flared green. The raiders cursed and veered off. Within seconds, I was pedaling away on the dust bike I'd jury-rigged from an old e-scooter and motorcycle engine. They fired once, an errant round that shredded my taillight and peppered the rusted fender. The engine choked, and I had to jump, off and push. The laugh of the raiders followed me for miles. I didn't stop until the rasp of gunfire and their silhouettes in the sun vanished behind dunes. Now the fender rattles like dry bones, and I secure it with scavenged I patch the taillight with black electrical tap, useless, but maybe enough to distract a second shooter. My heart still pounds, and I taste grit in my mouth. I owe that flare trick to an old campfire shower reel I watched years ago. Funny how pop culture can save your life. Asterisk between tremors and ambushes. Something else came through the radio, barely more than static, but familiar. A voice, 8.3 north, 122.6 west. Coordinates for the aquifer. I rewound the reel 3 times before I believed it. The coordinates pointed to a long, dried lake bed, now pocked with sinkholes and bone-white clay. It was 15 days' ride from here through some of the worst irradiated sludge. Fields the giants had cracked open, but if the aquifer were there, it could be enough to save not just me, but dozens of other towers and outposts. I cross-checked soil scans I'd cached years ago. The lake bed had overlain a known freshwater pocket dormant, yes, but not poisoned. If I could avoid the radioactive seepage fractures, maybe Dot, the voice never identified itself. No name, no call sign, just coordinates and a promise. We have pumps. We can share. Asterisk, I spent the next 2 nights wrestling with doubt. Could I trust a phantom broadcast? The reclaimers could have planted it to lure desperate survivors into a death trap. Raiders could ambush at the shore and strip the water for themselves. Or it could be genuine, a hidden commune that cracked the code on personal-scale aquifer pumping Dot. I thought of Leela's scarf drifting across a dusty street lamp years ago. I thought of Ravi's last static-filled message, trusting the voice. In the static had once cost me everything, but staying here would certainly kill me. Walking 15 days across irradiated sludge and giant shattered earth might kill me too, but dying in search of water might also give others a chance. I mapped the route under flickering red lamp. I prepared a cache of my own, distilled sap, in glass vials, spare filters, and a basic repair kit. I froze 30 minutes of my broadcast instructions on building charcoal filters, burned it onto an SD card, and stashed it in a hollowed-out battery cell. If I succeeded, others would decode and learn. If I failed, someone might still find it. Asterisk. On the 5th night, a microburst tore through my camp. A whirlwind of dust and shards of rock picked me up and threw me against the tower's leg. When I came to, my pack lay shredded, the water bladder ruptured, and my right arm throbbing with burns. The dust had filled my lungs. The taste of blood was thick as paste. I coughed for hours, phlegm spitting black dot by morning. My breathing was shallow, and I realized my oxygen saturation was too low for survival. I loaded the bike with my half-drained supplies and set out early, pedal pushing until noon. Then I spotted the black plume, wildfire. Not a puff of smoke, but a wall of flame dancing on the horizon, fed by the wind. I diverted north, hoping to skirt its edge. The flames crackled in the distance, trees turning to kindling in seconds. The air shimmered with heat, the road melted. My tire warped, and I had to push again. The sunscreen on my neck bubbled. The filter snapped. I held my breath, squinted against embers that floated like malevolent fireflies. When I crossed into its lee, the air cooled briefly and I gulped feverishly. I whispered a prayer to whatever ghost of the world I could summon. Asterisk. Late in the afternoon, I spotted 2 figures prowling atop a ridge. They had binoculars and scoped the road below. Instinct told me they were raiders. I ducked off the narrow path into a thicket of festering tumbleweed and lay still, chest burning. Their rifles clicked and the scope slid into place. I held my breath, counting heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Mirage rippled the air. If they fired, they'd hit nothing but brush. I inched backward, leaving a thread of my paracord dangling. At 20 feet, I dropped the scorched remains of a solar cell as a distraction. It skittered down the slope and lit like a spark in the dusk. The raiders cursed and gave chase downhill. I bolted uphill, bruising my ribs against rock, until I crested a ridge and saw them 300 meters below, chasing shadows. I peeled off, sprinting across cracked pavement, until I collapsed near a salt-crusted riverbank. Water here was too brackish to drink, but the salt formed hunger crystals on my tongue. I closed my eyes, willing my heart to slow asterisk as twilight deepened. I saw lights flicker at the far end of the lake bed candlelight, maybe, or gas lanterns. My wrist compass spun in static loops, but I headed toward them. With each step, the air grew cooler, an illusion, perhaps, from water rising in aquifer veins below. When I reached the edge, I found not flames, but a settlement carved into the clay banks, tents of reinforced tarp, solar reflectors glinting like fallen stars, metal pipes leading down through boreholes. A guard tower stood tall, manned by 2 rifle-carrying sentries. A voice crackled through my unit halt, where you stand, identify yourself. Asterisk. I raised my hands and spoke plainly. Mara Vasquez, radio broadcaster. I heard coordinates for an aquifer. I have supplies to trade and instructions for filter tech. I need water. Silence. Then a pause, crackling with static. Finally, the guard lowered her rifle. A third figure stepped forward, a slender woman with wind-bleached hair, wearing goggles and a lab coat patched with solar blanket scraps. She looked at my gaunt face, the smeared burn on my arm, the dust-clogged mask strapped around my neck. "You're crazy enough to walk here," she said. "We could use that kind of crazy." They led me past the guard post into a courtyard, lit by strings of LED lights. The air smelled of wet eartha, new scent after months of dust. They called themselves the Well Keepers. Their base was a former mining camp retrofitted for aquifer extraction. They had dozens of survivors, families, engineers, former soldiers living in metal frame huts. They'd rigged a desalination rig too, pulling water up, filtering it, and sending distilled lines into communal reservoirs. They offered me a bunk, a steaming mug of algae broth, and the first clean swallow of water I could remember. Tears stung. My eyes, as I drank, I gulped until the pool ran dry. My ribs ached, my throat burned, but I'd found something worth living for. Then came the ask. They needed my broadcast network. Their perimeter had been overrun twice by raiders who followed their water lines. They needed radio coverage to warn of attacks, to coordinate scavenger runs, and to recruit allies. In return, they'd share water, parts, and a place to sleep. Out the next dust storm, I hesitated. Sharing my network meant revealing my tower's location, exposing more people to danger, trust, or isolation. A choice I hadn't made in years. Asterisk that night. I lay in a cot, listening to the hum of the pump. The map I'd carried lay open on a crate, routes marked in red, fallback camps, sect ambush points. If I linked the tower and the Well Keepers, I'd create a lifeline across 100 miles. But if raiders learned the frequency, the Well Keepers' oasis would become a slaughterhouse. My dreams were haunted by Lila's laughter and Ravi's static laughter. I felt them both urging me to take a chance. I felt the static in my own blood, pulsing a message. Connection is the only hope we have at dawn. I rose and strapped on my pakri filled with pure water and stepped into the cold light of early morning. The Well Keepers gathered in a semicircle, faces lined with exhaustion and hope. Their leader, the woman in the lab coat, Dr. Serena Kwan, handed me a handheld transceiver. "Use it wisely," she said. "We're putting our faith in your voice." I pressed it to my lips, swallowed the ache in my chest, and keyed the mic. The generator throttled up, the solar arrays clicked awake, and the courtyard lights dimmed to signal open channel. "This is Mara Vasquez, broadcasting on behalf of the Well Keepers. We have water, we have shelter. Coordinates are." As I spoke, a low rumble shook the ground. My voice cracked. I looked up to see the silhouette of a giant on the ridge beyond the drilling tower Titanic, head crowned with lightning forks, eyes glowing like dying suns. The Well Keepers froze, their rifles raised. The pump's hum stuttered. I swallowed. Dust lifted the mic again and forced my voice steady. "Stay calm. This is Mara Vasquez. We have water. We have hope." And in that moment, under the watch of an ancient god, I wondered if hope could truly survive. Asterisk lightning forked across the bruised sky as the giant's silhouette loomed at the ridge's crest. Its footfall had already cracked 3 boards. In the clay bank, the pump shuddered, sputtered, then died. Water-pressurized pipes groaned and burst. Precious liquid sprayed like lethal mist. hissing against the cold night air. Dr. Serena Kwan shouted orders, but her voice was swallowed by the thunderous impact of the giant's step. Survivors scattered, clutching buckets and jars as flooding water rushed the courtyard floor. In that moment, time blurred, the settling dust, the roar of the breach, my own heart hammering against ribcage as if begging to escape. I sprinted toward the splitter valve, where 4 main lines fed the holding cisterns. The water was gushing, free carving trenches through tarpon timber huts. Without valves, the well-keeper's entire stock would vanish into the clay soil within minutes. I braced myself against the torrent and twisted the valve wheel with both hands. It wouldn't hold. I could feel the wheel's teeth stripping under pressure. But even a partial close might buy enough time. A second tremor blasted through the ground closer, sharper, shaking me sideways into the jet of water. I scrambled, pressing my back to the valve box, and felt the bolts shear. The wheel spun free in my hands. I bellowed for help. A young engineer, Sophia, barely 18, raced into the flood, her gait unsteady on the slick mud. Together, we clamped a spare fitting around the broken pipe, yanking a length of reinforced hose from her pack. Our hands moved as one, turn, tighten, seal. The pipe hissed and then fell silent. The leak staunched in the courtyard lamp's glow. We collapsed into each other, gasping, mud-slicked and shaking. Behind us, the giant raised an immense arm, its head tilted, focusing on the settlement like a child examining an anthill. One step could crush us all. Asterisk, I heard my own voice crackle over the radio. All survivors, fall back to the eastern shelters. Evacuate the pump house. Now sentries scrambled down from their guard tower, firing non-lethal tracer rounds at the giant's calf, hoping to draw its attention away. But a creature that vast cannot be deterred by pinpricks of light. It knelt towering over the courtyard, its crown of lightning illuminating boulder-like features carved by eons. Electricity crackled around its shoulders and curled through its beard of living storm. The well-keepers obeyed my order, but I hesitated. If they left unprotected, scavengers would descend at dawn. If they stayed, the giant would crush everything. I faced a choice, order and immediate desertion, sacrificing the base and every drop of water, or rally everyone to fight to risk everyone's lives on a desperate gambit. I looked at Sophia, trembling but resolute, her eyes reflecting the lightning. Wash. I thought of Leela's laugh, of Ravi's last message. Someone must remind them of what we were. Asterisk, wait, I shouted, lunging for the portable anemometer. I ran to my supply crate, yanked out the handheld seismograph I'd cobbled together from old smartphone parts. It beeped with low-frequency pulses, the giant's heartbeats, or its footsteps, registering as 0.8 hertz 2 steps every 2 seconds. Then I noticed something. Between each tremor, a faint offset resonance's second, quicker vibration, a higher harmonic, as though the giant itself carried the echo of something beneath. I recalibrated the device to filter out the primary tremors, then settled into a rapid rhythm. 5 hertz 5 vibrations every second. From a point south of the courtyard, the giant paused, its head twitching. In its palm, it cradled a shard of metal, one of our solar reflectors, torn free. I realized then the creature was not just stomping the pump, it was seeking something. Perhaps it was responding to the hum of the pump, or the resonant frequency of our drilling. It wasn't here to kill us. It was here to investigate. I keyed my mic. Listen up. The giant isn't hunting, it's reacting to the pump frequency. If we stop the pump, it might lose interest. Serena scrambled to a junction box and cut power. The courtyard lights snapped off, plunging us into darkness broken only by the giant's pulsing lightning aura. Its head tilted further, studying the husk of the pump station as though puzzled. Asterisk in the sudden silence. I felt every breath echo, every heartbeat roar. I thought back to the countless nights of data analysis and climate projections, the nights spent warning of collapse. I thought back to watching the first giant rise, heart in my throat. How could I have known that science would lead me here standing before an ancient being, my fate hinging on the drill's frequency? I closed my eyes and remembered Lila's scarf, the way it fluttered in a breeze that no longer existed. I felt Ravi's presence telling me that in the end, to survive was not enough. We had to connect with each other, with this world, even with the titans that walked it. I opened my eyes. The giant lifted its free hand and set the reflector shard atop its knuckle. Lightning danced around it. Then it exhaled a low, resonant rumble that I felt in my bones. It sounded almost like a breath or a sigh. Asterisk, I raised my voice. We're not your enemy. We're survivors keepers of your world, too. The seismograph crackled in my gloved hand. I tuned the device to emit a counterfrequency, 5 Hz, steady tone through the courtyard's speakers. A low thrum synchronized with the giant's secondary vibration. The hum grew louder, then deeper, then harmonized with the machine's residual pulse. The giant's posture shifted. Its shoulders relaxed. The storm in its beard coursed slower. The lightning faded to gentle sparks. It knelt, palm extended, toward the pump station's rubble. With deliberate care, it plucked a fragment of pipe from the clay, rotated it in its vast fingers, and returned it to the ruins. Then, as if granting a silent concession, it rose, one giant stride slow, precise bore it away from the settlement, and into the clay flats. Each step crumbled the ground, but its departure felt like a benediction. The air stilled. The static on the radio died. Asterisk, we remained frozen until the first pale light of dawn. Then Serena rushed to the junction box and restored power. The floodwaters receded. The pump kicked back on. Water gushed into the cisterns, once more clean, cool, untainted. People wept. Sophia raced through the courtyard, scooping water into waiting vessels. Survivors called out, thanks. I sank to my knees, hands soaked, letting the liquid run through my fingers. Serena approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. You did it, she said softly. You reminded it we aren't its enemies. I shook my head. You all did it, trusting me, building this place, broadcasting that signal. It wasn't just the frequency, it was our voice. As the sun rose, I realized that every warning I'd issued, every data point I'd charted, every broadcast I'd sent into the void had led to this moment. Science had given us the frequency. Humanity had given us the courage to speak, I thought, of Lalagon, but present in every heartbeat, every breath. I thought of Ravi the Zealot, who had taught me that faith, even misplaced, could move mountains or giants. I felt their voices whisper in the morning breeze, urging me onward. Asterisk, I climbed the tower later that day and keyed the mic, this time to broadcast. not only to the well keepers, but to every listening outpost I could reach. This is Mara Vasquez. Tonight, we faced a force older than our civilizations, and we survived together. The well keepers have water. They have space for more. They seek no war with you or with the giants that walk this earth. If you listen, if you dare to trust, travel east along the ridge roads. Follow the coded beeps at 5 hertz. We will guide you to life. This is not just survival. It's our new beginning. I cut the transmission and watched the sky. The clouds had thinned, revealing a faint stripe of blue something I hadn't seen. In years, I closed my eyes and inhaled. For the first time in a long time, hope tasted like water, and it was enough. Asterisk, the morning after the giant's departure felt surreal. Dawn spilled pale gold across a courtyard that, just hours before, lay flooded and trembling. Now, puddles reflected broken solar panels and ragged tents rebuilt overnight. Survivors moved with a quiet, purpose-refilling canteens, repairing walls, retying guy-ropes. Asterisk. I had ordered the well keepers to evacuate once we thought the giant threatened to crush everything. But in that crucial moment, we chose instead to speak, to offer harmony over flight. That decision saved the pump, and perhaps the settlement of more than 100 souls. Without pumping, our aquifer would have bled dry in hours. Without water, we'd have succumbed to thirst or raider assaults. The giant's exit was our greatest proof. It responded not to bullets or barricades, but to dialogue. Our improvised 5 hertz calls did more than staunch panic. They communicated intent. In choosing to engage rather than abandon, we turned a cataclysm into sanctuary. Asterisk hope here is not naive optimism. It is the knowledge that our choices reverberate louder than our fears. The well keepers' children will drink from clear reservoirs. Scouts will carve new routes across the clay flats, marking shelters and medical caches for travelers. And my broadcasts, once solitary monologues into buzzing static, now carry the hymns of a growing human network. Today, I transmitted our success story. Water flows again at 38.743 N, 121.567 W. The golden pump stands. Trust the 5 hertz beacon. Survivors, welcome. Together, we endure. Response crackled back faint voices from half-buried outposts, asking for directions, offering barter. For the first time since the collapse, the static felt alive. Asterisk, standing at the top of the tower, I traced the sunrise with my eyes. Each beam revealed a face in the courtyard, turning skyward, masks removed, eyes squinting against light that once meant doom. I felt the weight of my own scars, ribs still tender from the microburst, lungs rasping after partial acid drain exposure, the burn on my arm that leaves a patch of tight, pale skin. These reminders whisper that every victory carries a cost. Thought of Lila her laughter, like silver bell's end of Ravi's final broadcast, burning with zeal. My sister's death had taught me caution. My friend's fanaticism had shown me the peril of blind faith. Now their memories combine into something new, a cautious belief that every life saved, every voice heard, adds to our shared resistance. Asterisk, outside the settlement walls, the land remains scarred. The grove of drought-hollowed pines beyond the pump house stands dead, needles bleached white. The clay flats bear the giant's footprints like sinkhole craters, reminders that Earth's oldest denizens still roam. But near our drilled well, a curious change has begun. The first tufts of halophyte grass pushing through salt-crusted soil, tiny green shoots, no larger than a baby's fingernail. Dr. Kwan offered an explanation. The steady water table and occasional pump overspill have created a microhabitat. The algae beds below the holding ponds seed spores into the soil. Over time, these spores will enrich the earth, inviting pioneer species, even insects, to return. She smiled at me, voice soft. We may yet coax life back from these ruins. I traced one fragile blade with my fingertips. The world outside the oasis remains harsh, but even barren clay can yield green dot asterisk. 2 weeks after the giant's visit, I still rise before dawn. The generator hums as I broadcast weather updates and coordinates for approaching travelers. But now there's laughter on the line voices that greet me by name. Ask how my arm heals. Joke about my penchant for 5 hertz tunes. I respond not just as a lone voice in the static, but as a connector linking water seekers to well sites, scavenger bands to supply caches, lost survivors to communities. The solitary survivor I once was has become a guide, a beacon. My radio scripts now include notes of gratitude to the well keepers for risking everything to trust me, to the giants for teaching us a different language, to the world for holding on while we learn to listen. At night, I unplug the generator and step outside. I lean against the tower's cool concrete, watching electric lanterns sway in the courtyard. The hum of conversation drifts upward, and for a moment I close my eyes and simply listen. Asterisk hope has taken root, but uncertainty remains. The giants may return, or others may roam from distant mountain ranges, awakened by our drilling. Raiders still lurk beyond the ridge. Monsoons may yet turn into flash floods, and the reclaimers still out there may see our harmony as heresy tomorrow. Scouts will depart to chart new shelter sites and medical caches. I will ride with them, broadcasting conditions in real time, each decision where to go, whom to trust will be a test of everything I've learned, to balance caution with connection, data with faith, fear with action. I don't pretend these choices will always favor life. I do not sugarcoat the path ahead. But I have tasted water again. I have breathed without grit in my lungs. I have watched a living shoot push through dead clay at my feet. Asterisk, the giant may have walked away, but we remain, and each new traveler who finds their way here, guided by the 5 hertz beacon, becomes part of a collective pulse. Our network is fragile, built of salvaged parts, rationed supplies, and whispered rumors, but it is real. This morning, as sunlight climbed the tower, I spoke into the mic. To every survivor listening, you are not alone. Keep moving east along the ridge, high road. Follow the steady thump of 5 hertz. Here you will find water, shelter, and people who remember what it means to hope. We will rebuild, stone by stone, voice by voice, until this world learns to sing again. I ended the broadcast and exhaled. The morning breeze carried my words over tents and solar panels into the broken world beyond. I opened my eyes. The grass still glimmers, the courtyard thrives, and the sky. This morning it holds a wash of pale blue, just beyond reach, but unmistakable. I Take a steadying breath and step forward into the ongoing story of survival, trust, and fragile, unyielding hope. I don't know what tomorrow holds. The sky may darken with storm clouds, or the tremors might announce another giant's return. The well-keeper's reservoir could spring a leak, or raiders might breach our walls under cover of night. Yet here, at this moment, I have enough. Enough water in my canteen to last the day. Enough allies scattered across the ridge roads to keep me company on the airwaves. Enough belief that our signal, pulsing steadily at 5 hertz, will guide the lost toward safety. Hope is fragile, like the first green shoots breaking clay, or the thin film of ice that forms on a still pond before shattering under my weight. It can be crushed by a single misstep or a miscalculation, but it also regenerates in the most unlikely places, in the laughter of children gathering water, in the quiet nod between strangers trading filter caps, in the collective gasp when a giant merely turns and walks away without leveling us. Each small victory, every pump that holds, every broadcast that reaches a hidden outpost, stitches a new thread into the tattered fabric of our world. I've learned that survival is not a destination, but a process. We gather supplies, we share knowledge, we make choices that tip the balance between life and death. We adapt or we perish. And though the lessons are taught in sweat and fear, the greatest lesson of all is connection. Alone, we might stretch our final ration over a week, hiding beneath a collapsed overpass and waiting for the end. Together, we turn scarcity into resourcefulness, despair into resolve. Already, beyond the pumping station's clay walls, a network is looking forward. We prepare for the next phase, rebuilding not only wells, but communities. We'll map safe corridors between oasis sites, chisel out rock shelters beneath ridges, salvage solar arrays from ruined towns. We'll train water harvest, custodians to maintain pumps, teach young mechanics to rewire generators, and apprentice new broadcasters to keep the signal alive. The radio tower will no longer be my solitary outpost, but the beating heart of a regional network hour collective. Voice rising above the howling winds, the land itself shows signs of tentative healing. Where once only salt and dust held sway, I've seen patches of microbial mats along irrigation ditches, patches of moss on shaded boulders, and the beginnings of insect colonies around compost pits. These pioneers will pave the way for birds, for shrubs, for wildflowers. Nature's resilience is profound. Give it water, let it seed, and it will return. But we must guard those seedlings against overgrazing, against contamination, against the crushing heel of giant or raider alike. Survival will remain a constant struggle. Tomorrow's sunrise could bring a new storm, a broken valve, a power failure, or a giant tremor. We may be tested by drought, fire, flood, or plague. Every day will demand ingenuity, turning cactus sap into thread, rigging windmills from rusted bicycle frames, interpreting seismograph data to forecast Titanic approach. But each challenge also offers an opportunity to learn, to improve, to strengthen the bonds between us. My final message to you, wherever you may be, tuning in from a ruined apartment, a hollowed-out subway tunnel, or a crag above the wasteland. This: stay alive, stay connected. Carry a scrap of hope in your Pakata data card, a sachet of algae, a bit of solar film, Share it with someone who's running low. Trust enough to speak, even if your voice trembles. The static that fills the empty airwaves is not the end. It is a canvas waiting for fresh signals. Broadcast your knowledge, how to find water, how to blend clay for bricks, how to read wind patterns. Every word you send is an act of resistance against oblivion. The world we knew is gone. We cannot rewind to forests undisturbed or skies unscarred. But we can build something new, patchwork communities rooted in cooperation, fortified by shared memory, and guided by a common purpose to endure, to learn, and to rediscover wonder in a broken world. The giants walk among us, but they do not own the land. We do. Our voices echo across the clay flats, reminding usendom that humanity still stands. I turn the dial off now. The generator will keep humming until dawn. In that quiet interlude, I will close my eyes and listen to the wind in the pipes, to the faint drip of water into the cistern, to the distant heartbeat of the earth itself. And when I wake, I will pedal again, speak again, and fight for just one more sunrise. Because as long as our voices rise above the static, we have a chance. And hope, fragile though it may be, has always been stronger than despair.